For centuries, the galactic community believed Earth's inhabitants were a harmless anomaly, socially quirky, biologically underwhelming, and oddly sentimental. They were welcomed into the fold as a novelty, not a threat. Their planet was labeled a Class 4 Death World, but the designation was filed away as bureaucratic formality. After all, these humans didn't act like Deathworlders. They were soft-spoken in diplomacy, eager to cooperate, and relentlessly pacifistic. No one had ever seen them use force without first offering peace, sometimes even after being attacked. That puzzled many. It amused others. But most just dismissed it. In the central archives of the Galactic Concord, one alien scholar once described humans as complex, emotional primates who have weaponized empathy. Another report characterized their species as erratic and unpredictable in small clusters, but easily contained through structured alliances and ideological praise. Earth's technology was respectable, their sciences innovative, but nothing screamed dominance. They adopted alien culture easily, learned galactic languages quickly, even modified their own behavior to accommodate more sensitive species. Across dozens of joint colonies, humans were seen as ideal mediators, often stepping in to de-escalate conflict with uncanny patience. At diplomatic summits, they joked about their planet's brutal weather and wild fauna as if it were a comedic anecdote. "We used to outrun jaguars for fun," one ambassador laughed once, to polite, dismissive chuckles. The statement was filed under cultural exaggeration. No one looked deeper. They watched humanity's compassion and drew the wrong conclusion. They saw restraint and assumed cowardice. The flaw wasn't in observation, it was in interpretation. Humanity didn't suppress its instincts. It simply chose not to display them. Because on Earth, violence wasn't alien, it was instinct honed through millennia. Predators, starvation, plagues, disasters, and wars shaped every breath of human evolution. They didn't escape their death world. They survived it by becoming the dominant threat within it. But they smiled too well, laughed too freely, shared too kindly. And the galaxy was all too willing to believe the illusion. The arrival of Earth into galactic society was heralded as a success story. Integration rates were high, cooperation even higher. No history of preemptive aggression, no territorial demands. Most species found that comforting. A few found it suspicious. But curiosity faded. The prevailing consensus was clear: humans had been tamed, domesticated by civility. The galaxy mistook this for progress. It was, in truth, a delay. On the surface, their physiology was laughable by galactic military standards. Weak muscle density compared to Sarek warriors. Shorter lifespans than the Heskari. Slower reflexes than Trinari hunters. Their only outstanding metric was adaptability. They learned systems in weeks others took decades to grasp. They built neural interfaces that bypassed biological limitations entirely. Still, no one questioned why a so-called inferior species could evolve so quickly across such dangerous terrain. The answer was there, but no one wanted to look close enough. When humans settled on multi-species colonies, they always volunteered for the harshest zones. They offered to live near unstable gravity wells, endure volatile climates, or terraform borderline dead planets. It was chalked up to stubborn optimism or masochistic pride. But the truth sat just beneath the surface. Humans didn't fear hardship. They welcomed it. They understood it. It reminded them of home. The Kothrex would later be blamed for awakening what the galaxy had worked so hard to suppress. But they only pulled the trigger. The tension had long existed beneath the surface. The Kothrex saw the humans' smiles and assumed it meant weakness. They saw compromise and believed it meant fear. They struck a colony where humans lived side by side with weaker species, expecting retreat or surrender. What they didn't expect was stillness. The kind of eerie calm that settles just before a natural disaster. What they didn't know was that this time, Earth wasn't going to walk away. The moment was coming. The mask was slipping. An old Earth proverb went unnoticed by most translators. Speak softly and carry a big stick. The galaxy had only ever heard the speaking. They had never seen the stick. That would change soon. Because mercy is only mercy when it is a choice. And the galaxy was about to learn that humans had been choosing it all along. The warning came too late. By the time orbital sensors registered the Kothrex fleet, the skies above the Lorthan 4 colony had already turned black. This wasn't a territorial incursion. It was a purge. The Kothrex descended without negotiation, without pretense. Their ships rained kinetic bombardment on evacuation routes, hospitals, and hydroponic centers. There were no demands. Only silence followed by fire. Civilians ran, stumbled, vanished under collapsing shelters. The emergency frequencies cracked with static and screaming. Of the joint staff stationed there, only a fraction were human. Engineers, medical officers, a few security detachments. They'd been sent for support, not combat. They carried medkits, not rifles. The alien personnel panicked, rightfully. The Kothrex didn't take prisoners. They didn't recognize surrender. Their doctrine was eradication. So when the first dropships opened, chaos overtook procedure. Orders were scrambled. No resistance protocol had prepared them for this scale of brutality. Galactic Command issued a fallback directive: prioritize survival, abandon the colony, avoid escalation. But not everyone moved. Lieutenant Kieran Holt stood still in the dust, helmet in one hand, the other tightening straps on his vest with mechanical precision. His eyes didn't flinch. Around him, aliens ran for cover, trembling, eyes wide. One xenomedic screamed at him. "You're going to die!" Holt didn't reply. He just looked up, expression unreadable, watching enemy troops land through fire. A comms officer begged for backup. Earth Command responded with protocol: stand down. Evacuate. Hold fire unless engaged. Holt heard it. He turned off his comms. It was the first refusal. He walked forward, alone, past scorched barricades, past the remains of a destroyed nursery, past a dying alien child still clutching a melted toy. His boots crushed ash as he approached the kill zone. One Kothrex raised a weapon. Holt didn't run. He closed the distance faster than they expected, used cover like breathing, angles like a predator. His first shot wasn't from panic. It was placement, center mass, then two more for certainty. The second target tried to flank. Holt didn't shoot. He redirected a live plasma charge into their squad. The air shimmered with heat and blood. No cries. Just silence as more followed. He moved like instinct in motion. No hesitation. No wasted steps. Every shot counted. Every maneuver was intent. He didn't rage. He calculated. This wasn't emotion. It was clarity. Alien survivors watched in disbelief. They didn't understand what they were seeing. Holt didn't look larger than them. Didn't appear stronger. Yet the Kothrex began pulling back. They'd never seen this before, this surgical brutality, this refusal to die quietly. Holt used to reign like a sculptor, luring, isolating, striking. He moved through the slaughter like it was familiar. Other humans began to mirror him. A medic swapped gauze for a rifle. A pilot reconfigured a mining drone into a makeshift turret. No one told them to. They simply understood the situation had changed. Survival wasn't enough now. Witnessing wasn't enough. The moment demanded something ancient. The Kothrex responded with full force. 3 squads converged on Holt's position. They thought numbers would end it. But Earth didn't raise prey. The counter-ambush unfolded in under 7 minutes. Holt disappeared into the wreckage, appearing only to strike, vanish again, leave panic where silence once lived. By the end, none of the attackers were left intact. The aliens watching had no word for what they'd seen. Not strategy. Not combat. It felt primal. Precise. Inevitable. A broadcast drone caught fragments of the incident. Short, jagged footage made its way through firewalls and embargoes. Other colonies watched in disbelief. The man's face never showed rage. Only cold determination. The expression wasn't monstrous. It was human. And that terrified more than the violence itself. No orders had been given. No declarations made. Yet every human present had shifted, synchronized without speaking. They adapted on instinct. They fought like survival was muscle memory. There was no rally cry, no anthem. Just quiet resolve that refused to kneel. One alien survivor recorded a short log before collapse. "I thought they were peaceful. I thought they couldn't. But they just turned. Like something old woke up. Something that had been waiting." Earth Command received the incident report. Most of it was redacted. Internal memos circulated in sealed encryption. A phrase appeared in several. Asterisk. "Condition verge, passive no longer." Asterisk. Holt was recovered days later. Alive. Wounded. Silent. When asked why he disobeyed protocol, he only said, "I didn't. The situation changed. So I did." That was the moment the galaxy understood. The humans had rules. But not limits. The footage from Lorthan 4 spread faster than containment protocols could intercept. Across secured networks and encrypted relays, frames of human soldiers operating with chilling clarity in the aftermath of the Kothrex massacre were replayed in silent, stunned loops. What had once been a theoretical classification, Deathworlder, now had undeniable footage to prove its meaning. But the real shift didn't happen in the minds of civilians. It happened behind the sealed doors of Earth's Strategic Response Directorate. Within hours, Earth activated a protocol unseen since pre-integration era files were sealed. Deathworld Doctrine Phase 0. No public broadcast, no dramatics. Just access granted to systems locked behind layers of fail-safes and psychological filters. The doctrine wasn't a counterattack strategy. It was a psychological, biological, and logistical playbook for existential war. Crafted not in the optimism of diplomacy but in the shadow of Earth's bloodiest centuries, it wasn't designed to win quickly. It was designed to make the enemy regret escalation. First came data acquisition. Human analysts pulled patterns from Kothrex engagements dating back 3 decades, mapped them across known behavior clusters, and predicted 5 high-likelihood next strike zones. Not guesses, probabilities refined to a decimal. Autonomous drones deployed in those sectors within 4 hours. Civilian evacuations disguised as trade route delays began immediately after. Next came psychological terrain control. Human operatives seeded false narratives across Kothrex data channels, fabricated troop movements, planted visual evidence of internal betrayal, even falsified a coup attempt on a key warlord. The enemy turned on itself before human ships ever arrived. It wasn't warfare. It was invasive thoughtcraft. Entire fronts collapsed under fear of betrayal. At the same time, Earth's black site research centers reopened dormant projects once deemed too severe for peacetime. Adaptive chemical countermeasures were repurposed from pest control agents designed for Terran deep jungle predators. These were non-lethal to humans but caused intense neural disorientation in Kothrex biology. The gases didn't kill. They disoriented, fragmented coordination, induced irrational retreat behaviors. The battlefield became a mind trap. Human logistics worked silently, efficiently. Ships not built for war were modified into rapid deployment fortresses. Cargo hulls became mobile command bunkers. Medical transports were armored and equipped with AI-controlled suppression systems. Supply chains bent without breaking. While other species required months to coordinate interstellar response, Earth mobilized planetary regiments across 3 sectors in under 72 hours. Not with brute force, but with surgical precision. Human commanders issued a new rule of engagement: no glory, no theatrics, no broadcast victories. The goal wasn't recognition. It was deterrence. Operatives worked with redacted names. Battlefield reports came stripped of identifiers. The galaxy would see results, not faces. The fear wouldn't come from who the humans were, but from what they did without needing recognition. What unsettled alien observers most wasn't the violence. It was the absence of emotional charge. No screaming, no dramatization. Human units moved in silence, speaking only when required. They didn't charge. They waited. They didn't pursue retreating enemies. They let them flee, and planted disinformation for the next assault. Every move carried intention. Every withdrawal, a setup. Every loss, a bait. Cothrek's command tried adapting. They rotated leadership. Changed encryption. Shifted tactics. But humans weren't reacting. They were predicting. Ambushes were neutralized before they started. Supply drops vanished mid-transit. War councils turned on each other, convinced of moles that didn't exist. The enemy began turning inward, doubting its own hierarchy. Earth never issued threats. They simply dismantled momentum. Alien observers requested access to human tactical briefings. Earth declined. They didn't explain. They didn't have to. The message was clear. This doctrine isn't for show. It's survival refined through generations. It exists because the universe never gave us safety. By the third week, rumors spread of humans deploying without armor, moving through biohazard zones unaffected. That wasn't true, but the rumor was allowed to flourish. Human PSYOPs departments intentionally leaked footage of operatives calmly navigating gas zones, amplifying the myth. The goal wasn't domination. It was caution. Humanity didn't want obedience. They wanted breathing room. One intercepted Cothrek's transmission captured a commander begging for retreat clearance. Not because of losses, but because they move like they've done this before. Like they've already lost everything once and aren't afraid to lose again. That was the difference. The galaxy fought to survive. Humans fought because survival was the only state they'd ever known. War wasn't glory. It was routine. And now that the mask had dropped, they weren't hiding their routines anymore. The Cothrek's fleet vanished from 4 sectors within 10 days. No farewell message, no ceasefire terms. They simply stopped transmitting. Surveillance drones found drifting husks of their warships, some still powered, crewless. Others were found with intact armories and scattered uniforms, abandoned mid-shift. There were no signs of battle. No external damage. Just a quiet, complete absence of will. For a species known for relentless aggression, the retreat was uncharacteristic. For the rest of the galaxy, it was chilling. Empires that once viewed humans as auxiliary participants now reevaluated every diplomatic engagement. Their cultural analysts combed through archived footage, retranslated old speeches, revisited ancient Terran wars with new context. The consensus emerged quietly, reluctantly. They had misunderstood Earth's nature entirely. What they once saw as endearing unpredictability was actually strategic ambiguity. The easy smiles, the quick forgiveness, the self-deprecating humor, they weren't signs of weakness. They were filters, meant to keep others at ease, to mask the depth of capability behind simplicity. Now the filter was gone. Human representatives stopped accepting invitations to strategy conferences. They withdrew from ceremonial parades. Their fleets continued to operate, but without fanfare. No colors, no symbols, no transmitted ident codes unless required. The galaxy had no idea what the humans were planning next, and that uncertainty created a ripple of restraint amongst species long accustomed to dominance. The Council of 17, a coalition of powerful species, convened to discuss potential risks of human escalation. A motion to place diplomatic pressure on Earth was introduced. It never passed. Every delegate had seen the same footage: small, mobile human units dismantling superior numbers with coordinated silence. One ambassador, who had previously mocked Terran fragility, refused to speak during the entire summit. His species had lost 2 forward stations without a single alert being triggered. Even species not involved in the conflict began adjusting their behavior. Longtime rivals suddenly opened negotiations. Long-frozen treaties were revisited with newfound urgency. Not because of any human request, but because of their absence. The quietness unsettled them. A galaxy used to spectacle had no vocabulary for threat wrapped in stillness. Alien mercenary guilds started requesting human instructors. Not to learn weapons, they had plenty. They wanted to learn adaptability, improvisation under stress, threat prediction from limited data. Human operatives didn't teach traditional tactics. They taught mindset, observation before action, breathing techniques under sensory overload, how to weaponize uncertainty. Attendees described the training as disturbingly calm, as if they weren't teaching war, but endurance. The Kothreks weren't the only ones unraveling. Entire doctrines across multiple civilizations were rendered obsolete. Defense systems built around predictable responses failed to account for human fluidity. The enemy wasn't just unconventional, it was unreadable. And that made them unassailable. You couldn't plan for what refused to follow patterns. A broadcast leaked from a remote frontier outpost. It showed a lone human calmly advising a panicked alien squad as enemy units approached. No urgency in his voice. Just clarity. The squad survived. The footage went viral. What struck most viewers wasn't the outcome, it was how unaffected he seemed. As if danger was routine. As if saving lives under fire didn't require emotion, just presence. Religious factions began forming theories. Some claimed humanity's restraint was divinely engineered, that Earth was a test placed among the stars to teach humility. A Trinary prophet called humans the concealed flame, dangerous not because of their power, but because they never needed to prove it. They had simply waited until the galaxy asked the wrong question. Political blocs began shifting their alliances. Not toward Earth, humans weren't asking for loyalty. But no one wanted to be opposite them. Even ancient empires known for pride adopted diplomatic caution. Earth's envoys received apologies disguised as trade agreements. Aggressive species opened peaceful research exchanges. Terms like soft influence and strategic empathy started appearing in intelligence reports. Humanity had accomplished what fleets never could, respect without occupation. An internal Kothreks log eventually surfaced. Fragmented, damaged, partially corrupted. In it, a high-ranking officer confessed confusion, fear, and awe. The final lines simply read, asterisk. They were never hiding from us. They were protecting us from what they really are. Asterisk. And with that, the galactic balance shifted, not because Earth demanded it, but because the galaxy realized it had been living next to a sleeping apex species. Not a predator in the traditional sense, but something older. Something forged not in dominance, but in defiance. A species that never needed to conquer, only endure, until endurance required reminder. The moment had come. The galaxy didn't just blink. It changed course. The war ended without a final battle. The Kothreks didn't negotiate, didn't sign surrender treaties, didn't return for revenge. They simply stopped. Their fleets retreated to dark space, their colonies went silent, their signals vanished from the grid. No species chased them. No one wanted to. What remained wasn't victory, it was recalibration. Across the stars, a quiet understanding settled in. Humanity had redefined what it meant to be feared, not through scale, but through intent. And now, everything had changed. Where once Earth had been spoken of with indulgent amusement, it was now referenced with wary respect. Governments began revising protocol. Earth personnel were no longer categorized as non-aggressive auxiliaries, but as variable response entities. Entire departments were created to study Terran behavioral models. Analysts tried to quantify the threshold, what specific line had been crossed to trigger the transformation. They never found one. Because it wasn't a moment. It was a decision. On Earth, the aftermath was different. There were no parades, no broadcasts, no self-congratulation. Human leaders didn't declare triumph. They returned to the work that had been paused: terraforming, trade agreements, ecological recovery. The ones who fought returned to silence, not because they were hiding, but because their purpose had always been protection. What they revealed hadn't been a performance. It had been necessity. Across the colonies, memorials rose, not just for those lost, but for the moment the galaxy saw what humanity was capable of. At the base of one monument, a plaque read, asterisk, held back by choice. Unleashed by need. Asterisk. It wasn't pride. It was record. Alien cultures responded in ways they didn't fully understand. Instructors began including human history in war colleges, not to glorify it, but to study the adaptability. The philosophy of patience under pressure, of choosing kindness until it was no longer an option. Entire doctrines shifted from force to flexibility. Some species adopted new policies on preemptive empathy, modeled after Terran coalition building. Others, fearing internal unrest, introduced training programs on psychological resistance, using human stress response patterns as the template. A child from the Zalari species, whose home was saved during the campaign, once asked a question that spread through the networks. Were they always like this? The answer, given by a veteran commander, echoed across forums and broadcasts. No. They just didn't need to show it. Until someone made them. That became the new caution. Earth never demanded status. It earned it by withholding what it could have taken. No species had ever gained influence by removing fear. Humans had done it by introducing a deeper one, the fear of what else they might be capable of, should another line be crossed. Not all responded with anxiety. Some saw something more. In the chaos, they'd glimpsed a pattern. Humanity had stepped in not to conquer, but to prevent collapse. Their response wasn't fueled by ambition. It was driven by responsibility. They didn't dominate. They stabilized. Not for profit, but because they couldn't stand by. And that made them dangerous in a way no one had prepared for. In the cycle of power, where strength usually eroded compassion, Earth had preserved both. It wasn't their weapons that terrified empires. It was that they'd mastered restraint despite having them. They didn't strike first. But when pushed, they struck with absolute finality. No flair. No excess. Just completion. Galactic languages began borrowing Terran phrases. One, in particular, spread fast. Asterisk. Silent resolve. Asterisk. It became shorthand for a force that waits, watches, and only acts when the alternative is worse. The phrase wasn't used lightly. Only in moments where impossible decisions had to be made. And with it came a whisper of Earth. Humanity, once overlooked, was now legend. Not in the way conquerors are remembered, but in the way fire is understood, not evil, not good, but necessary when the cold becomes lethal. New maps labeled Earth not as a curiosity, but as an axis point, where routes converged, where peace began or ended. Some feared it. Others depended on it. But no one ignored it. What had been hidden had been revealed. Not fully. Not forever. But enough. They had waited. They had endured. And when the mask fell, it wasn't rage they showed. It was clarity. The kind that only comes from a species that learned long ago that survival isn't granted, it's chosen. And now, the galaxy understood. Because Deathworlders didn't roar when they arrived. They whispered when they stopped pretending.